Hello friends, today I'm going to talk to you about the movie The Omega Man. In the year 1977, Los Angeles, much like the rest of the world, was left deserted. Just 2 years before, the Soviet Union and China exchanged missiles loaded with bacteriological weapons, leading to everyone on the planet suffering. The majority of the world's population passed away, and those who survived underwent changes. Their skin and hair turned completely white, and they became blind in bright light, yet they could see perfectly well at night. A group of mutants residing in Los Angeles referred to themselves as a family. The leader of this group was Jonathan Matthias. The sole threat to the family members came from a man named Robert Neville. He had not been infected during the epidemic and was now methodically searching through all the buildings in the city, attempting to locate the nest where the mutants concealed themselves after sunrise. Robert drove around the ravaged city of Los Angeles in his car, taking whatever he desired from stores and even visiting the theater to watch a movie. At the same time, they had to run a gasoline generator because there was no electricity anywhere. However, because of 2 years of living alone, Neville began to hallucinate. As he left the movie theater, he heard phones ringing all over the city. After dealing with the obsession, he drove home. At the garage door, mutants tried to burn him, but Robert outgunned them and drove inside. Every night they gathered under the windows of his house, like gopniks on the bench at the entrance, and started shouting in debauchery, preventing Neville from sleeping. To the family, Robert was a monster. He used firearms, electricity, and gadgets from a dead civilization. Matthias and the family thought science and technology were evil, as they caused the global catastrophe. So, they abandoned them and tried to kill Neville, believing he was the last man of technological civilization. By killing him, they thought they could live in peace. Matthias, like the rest of the mutants, had once been an ordinary man. He worked as a news anchor. But then war broke out between the Soviet Union and China. Missiles with bacteriological weapons were launched, and a deadly contagion swept across the world. People were dropping dead in the streets. Others became mutants. Robert Neville was a flame of hope in all this chaos. He was a military doctor and was trying to develop a vaccine to stop the epidemic. He had an experimental sample that needed to be transported to the designated test site. However, during the flight, the pilot suddenly fell ill. Tragically, he died from a new illness, causing the helicopter to crash to the ground. The injured Neville realized he was also infected, so he quickly injected himself with the vaccine. It turned out that the sample was indeed effective. Robert became immune to the disease, but unfortunately, he was never able to reproduce the vaccine. Theoretically, his blood could potentially help the infected, but testing it was problematic, as all these fanatics were obeying Matthias and tried to kill Neville. As morning comes, Robert sets out again to mop up the city from mutants. Despite his best efforts, he was still unable to locate the family's nest. After he finished clearing another sector, he entered a store where he noticed a living person among the mannequins. It was a woman, and she ran away when she spotted Neville. After an unsuccessful chase after the stranger, Robert went to a bar to wet his throat. Then, he heard some noise close to the wine racks, so he went to investigate. It turned out to be a mutant ambush. A rat got knocked over onto Neville, and then he was captured and taken to the family's den. Matthias put the injured Robert on trial and then commanded him to be taken to the interrogation room. In this room, Neville pondered why Matthias and the others weren't attempting to find a cure for his condition. The head of the family confessed that he didn't believe a vaccine was possible, and attempting to create one would mean switching over to the side of a science they had rejected. Having finished their conversation, Matthias orders Neville's execution. He is taken to the stadium and is about to be burned. But then someone turns on the lights, and while the mutants can't see anything, Robert is freed by a guy named Dutch. He's working with the woman Neville saw at the store the other day. Her name is Lisa. She's afraid of Robert because he's known to shoot anything that moves. So, she pulls out a gun on him and forces him to get on a motorcycle and take the wheel. Together, he and Lisa ride away from the stadium, which is packed with albino mutants. They are covered by Dutch, who is throwing light grenades at Matthias's family members. Lisa guides Neville, showing him the way, and they eventually reach a shelter where other survivors are hiding. These people are not yet dead or transformed into pale mutants, but each one of them has contracted the disease and is desperate to be cured. Lisa and the others learned that Robert was a medic and asked him for help. Lisa's younger brother, Richie, followed Michael Jackson's path and began to turn pale. His transformation was not yet complete, but the boy was no longer able to be in the light. After examining him, Neville realized that he could rid Richie of the infection. It was only necessary to give him a blood transfusion. Robert told Eliza that he had tested an experimental vaccine on himself, and now his blood could cure the mutation. But we need to move the boy to Neville's house. The necessary equipment is there. Together with Lisa and Dutch, they take Richie to Robert's house. On the way, he tells how he once caught a family member to test on him the drug he created after the apocalypse. However, the attempt was unsuccessful, and the mutant died. In the evening, Robert and Lisa began to bond. Lisa said that she and Richie spent some time in the Matthews family, but then, realizing that the mutants are set against everything human, they ran away. Afterward, they met with Dutch and the other survivors. During their conversation, Neville and Lisa decide to kiss. But at that moment, the power goes out in the house. Robert realizes that he forgot to put fuel in the generator and goes down to the garage to do so. He leaves Lisa upstairs with the machine gun. Meanwhile, Matthias decides to take advantage of the situation and sends his subordinate to Neville. He manages to climb up to the balcony, but at that moment, Robert starts the generator again and the lights come back on. The mutants were too afraid to remain close to the house, yet the killer managed to enter. Robert arrived just in time and shot the attacker, who had already drawn a gun and started shooting. To celebrate their miraculous rescue, Neville and Lisa made love. With the patient in urgent need of rescue, Robert felt enthusiastic and returned to work with renewed energy. He transfused Richie with his own blood, analyzing it and attempting to develop a cure for diseases. Robert suddenly realized that Lisa was also on the edge and might start turning at any moment. Therefore, he was doing everything possible to prevent it. Together, the two of them went to the hospital to gather the missing tools and containers they needed there. Corpses, technical system. Lisa assisted Neville in draining his blood and infusing it into her brother. Robert was confident that once Richie recovered, he would become the source of new antibodies, which could then be utilized to develop drugs. This way, everyone in Dutch's group might be cured. Additionally, there was a possibility that the vaccine could also aid mutants. Richie was improving. He was less fearful of the light now. Once he was completely cured, Neville and Lisa intended to leave this place and move somewhere in the mountains to begin a new life together. Lisa needs something suitable to wear in the mountains, so she decides to head to the store. Robert feels uneasy about her trip, knowing that once night falls, Matthias's mutants will emerge. Despite their presence, Lisa remains unafraid. Nevertheless, she chooses to bring along the machine gun for safety. As Neville extracts another portion of blood, he tells Richie that Lisa's illness will soon start to show symptoms. Consequently, they must begin her treatment upon her return. Richie is curious about whether Matthias and the other mutants have any chance of being cured. Robert is uncertain if his vaccine will be effective for those who have already converted. Then Richie suggests they should be killed. He knows the location of the family's lair and shares this information with them. However, destroying them is not part of Neville's plan. His only desire is to leave. Richie is unhappy with this approach to the problem. He plans to go to Matthias and propose offering him the medicine. Meanwhile, Robert visits Danish and informs him that the vaccine for the survivors will soon be ready, after which they can head to the mountains and leave behind the nightmare they had to endure. Back home, Neville discovers a note from Richie and realizes he's gone to see Matthias. He grabs his gun and follows. Meanwhile, Richie ends up captured by mutants. They bring him to their leader, and Richie tells him about the cure. He offers to help them return to their former selves, but Matthias declines. To Matthias, their current form is the only way. He thinks Neville sent Richie with this offer, so he expels the boy. You don't want to treat them? Then kill them. As Lisa returned from the store, her body started to mutate. She saw a crowd of mutants and joined them, losing her humanity. After Matthias told her about her brother, Lisa accepted it, feeling like family. Neville found Richie's body at the courthouse, realized the boy couldn't be saved, and went home, but was ambushed. His car overturned, but Robert survived. Firing back at the albinos, he made his way to his house. Going upstairs, he met Lisa. However, due to the darkness, Robert did not immediately realize she had turned. The news about Richie didn't upset her. She had come here to kill Neville and had brought her friends with her. Matthias and the other mutants were hiding behind the furniture. They grabbed Robert and trashed his place. But he managed to get out of it and grab Matthias. Threatening to kill their leader, Neville made his way to the elevator, where he grabbed Lisa and descended to the garage. His plan was to take his lover away from her group and then cure her. To achieve this, he brought the mutation cure along with him. However, Lisa remained loyal to Matthias, and when he called out to her from the balcony, she responded to his call. Robert attempted to stop Lisa, but at that critical moment, Matthias hurled a spear directly at his chest. Neville lay in the fountain until morning. The mutants left, but Lisa stayed by their side. She still considered herself part of the family, but despite that, she couldn't leave. As dawn broke, Dutch and his children arrived. They took Lisa away, and Neville handed Danish some medicine. He then passed away and was left lying in the fountain like a crucified savior. Dachu drove the survivors away from the place. They were given a chance for a cure,